Welcome to Emotional Intelligence Simplified. This is a weekly podcast focused on demystifying and discussing what emotional intelligence is. Welcome to Emotional Intelligence Simplified, the podcast. I am your host, Angela Mwehaki. The EI podcast is all about demystifying the myths about emotional intelligence and helping us realize that truly it is an important skill for all of us. And today we are tackling the issue of emotional regulation and resilience. And to help us delve into this topic, we have with us Kezi Karuro Kihara. Hi, Kezi.
Hi.
Karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
Now, Kezi is an executive leadership coach. She's also an EI practitioner and coach, and also a HR leader. Kezi is a people's person. She's all about people and believes in helping people to be the best versions of themselves. So let's start with, when we talk about this word, emotional regulation, what does it mean?
Thank you, Angela, and thank you so much for having me today. Emotional regulation. This is all about managing how we feel, how we react, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, or whether it is emotionally. So when you're able to regulate those type of feelings, you're able to have your clarity in mind, thought clarity. You're able to respond more productively and more constructively, rather than just reacting in any way. Yes.
How much can we really regulate how we feel? Because sometimes we feel like it's all beyond us.
Yes. And you're very right. And I know a lot of the times when people talk about emotions and intelligence and regulation, sometimes people think it's about not doing anything. But that is actually not the case. It is knowing exactly how you're feeling, why you're feeling it, and then knowing what to do about that feeling. Instead of bottling it inside you and lashing out at people, then in this case, what you should do is really understand what you're feeling. And once you understand it, then you can be able to respond rather than react.
I like that. So the difference here is that once we can regulate, we respond rather than just immediately react to something.
Yes.
So maybe let's look at what are, some of the common challenges people face when they're trying to regulate.
Yes. When you're trying to regulate, in most cases, you don't really understand how you're feeling.
Yes.
And what happens is that you get the feeling of being overwhelmed. And why are you being overwhelmed? Because you really don't know how you're feeling.
True.
And then it leads to anger. You start getting anger outbursts because you don't know exactly what to do at that particular moment. And with that comes anxiety. And in worst case situations, that's how you get people having mental issues, in terms that eventually worst case leads to depression, because you actually don't know what you need to do at that moment when you're having that, dealing with that type of emotion.
Now, you mentioned just before this that people need to realize that bottling things down is not the way. Because, sometimes you're told, especially like when you look at the work scenario, problems from outside, leave them outside, get to work, and then do that. Truly, is that practical even?
No, it's actually it's not practical, because we all know humans are all about emotions.
Yes.
In everything that you do. If you think about the emotions that you go through in a day, there are very, very many. Happy ones, sad ones, excitement, all those are emotions. So bottling it in is actually not the way to do it. But first is to know that you can be able to regulate it, understand that you can regulate it, and then, as I had said earlier, be able to respond to that.
Now, let's look at the element of leadership. Sometimes there are pressures. You have this team you're working with, you're trying to lead them in the same direction. You're also getting external pressure on maybe delivery and other things. Like, what are the things you're seeing and learning that people need to start internalizing to understand how to be able to self-regulate? Because, you have to self-regulate and then also work on your team as well.
Interesting and very, very valid question and point, especially when it comes to leadership. Because a lot of times leaders think it's about the delivery in the work. But you've got to ask yourself, how are you getting your team to deliver?
Okay.
And as we said, we are all about emotions.
Yes.
Everything we do has to do with emotions. So as a leader, it is actually more important for you to be able to regulate your emotions. let's take, for example, a project goes wrong. We didn't meet the deadline that we were supposed to meet. Then you walk into a room and start shouting. What is the reaction that you get?
We back off, some of us.
Yes. And you'll not get a response from your team. So being able to know, okay, this has actually gone wrong. How do I feel? How do I actually say how I feel? How do I communicate to the team that I'm actually not happy? If you're not happy, you're not happy. You can't hide you're not happy. But how do you do it? Are you able to identify that emotion, know what your triggers are, and then pause and reflect on what's going on? And that way, you're able to respond more constructively. You're able to actually get a lot more from the people. So as a leader, it is actually most important to ensure that your emotional intelligence is at a high level and you're able to regulate your emotions.
Also, how do you sometimes also, I like that. So self-awareness is how it comes in.
Yeah.
Now, how do we also manage our team? Because sometimes there's bickering, there are other things, there's the personality issues. How do you then, even as a leader, still get into those elements?
Yeah. Okay. You've mentioned self-awareness.
Yes.
Self-awareness is actually one of the core competencies of emotional intelligence. So if you undertake the emotional intelligence course to be certified as a practitioner, you will go through what self-awareness is. And this is really being able to understand and identify what it means to you to have some particular emotions. And once you identify and understand, then, as I had said earlier, you're able to respond.
Yes.
So with that, then remember, you're the one who is setting the pace in the organization.
Exactly.
So when it comes to your people and they are seeing the way you're responding, then they will also follow with you, follow suit with you in that. And with that, you're able to develop coping mechanisms, especially when emotions are very high, because you're aware
of yourself.
And again, you're also aware of others. And when you develop coping mechanism, then there are no outbursts. There is no shouting. There is no, people seeing you and they scatter. So self-awareness is very key when it comes to regulating your emotional regulation.
You're also now raising the issue of awareness of others. How do you use that skill to get your team to perform better and, to work better and more effectively?
Yeah. See, we don't operate in a silo. We operate with people.
True.
And as your leader, who are you leading? You're leading people. So if you don't know your people, if you don't know how to manage your people, then it becomes very difficult to actually work with the teams that you have. And again, self-management is also one of the core competencies of emotional intelligence. So first, understand yourself.
Yes.
Be aware of yourself, who you are, what are your triggers, how do you react in particular situations, and then understand the people. Manage to be so that you're able to manage the people you're working with. And of course, when you're working with people, there'll be various emotions coming along. So identifying and understanding yourself and your people is actually very key as a leader.
So looking at you, what are some of the things or tricks you've learned to be able to make things work better? Because sometimes we need techniques, you know, as much as you want to breathe in and breathe out. There are things you've seen over time.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you've dealt from your CV, you've dealt with different kinds of scenarios where people are very different culturally, and the kind of tasks and things they have to do. And that sometimes can cause a lot of friction. So what are some of the techniques you've learned over time?
Funny thing, you've mentioned breathing. It's actually one of the key things that we need to do to be able to regulate our emotion.
Okay.
So I'll break this into two. We've got your physical shifts, and then you've got your mental shifts.
Right.
So physical shifts, for one, is breathing, just taking deep breaths. And if you do that, there's a calmness that comes in. Your body sort of stops everything and realigns itself or starts thinking things differently. So breathing is actually one of the key and most important techniques you can use. The other physical one is stepping away.
And stepping away.
Yes. And I know somebody has asked me, but you're in a meeting.
Yeah, how do you just get up and step away?
And you step away. And let me tell you, you'd rather step away than having anger escalating in a meeting, because you're not going to be productive at all. And just saying, give me 5 minutes. I need to take a break. Go out, go and breathe a bit more. Wash your face if that works for you. and come back. And you know what that happens? You're able to compose yourself and have the clarity of what the situation is before you can come back. Yes. Then I did mention about the mind shift.
Okay.
The mentor one. And the mentor one here is really about reframing the situation. Don't think about the situation in a negative way, but we always think about the situation in a very negative way. Think about what are the key learnings from what is happening.
In a crisis, I don't know if I'd be able to start when everything is going wrong. I can see the breathing bit, but how do we start looking for learning points when right now we have an emergency?
Yes, and that's why we are talking about learning these strategies and these techniques. Asking yourself, telling yourself, I can actually be able to handle this, rather than throwing your hands up in the air and saying, okay, I give up. This is not happening anymore. And self-talk.
Okay, let's talk about that one.
I'm good at what I'm doing. I'm here because I'm the best at what I'm doing. Rather than thinking I have failed, I can't control people in a meeting, or nobody's listening to my points and everything. But how do I deliver this message for people to understand? So self-talk. Remember, again, we talked about, first of all, your self-awareness.
Understanding you, yes.
Yes. And if you do more self-talk, then you will be able to achieve more, rather than thinking you're not good enough. If you think you're not good enough, then there's nothing more you can say.
Because the imposter syndrome, when things are bad, you start thinking, really, can I handle?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. And then finally, mindfulness.
Mindfulness.
Be present and focused.
Okay.
Instead of thinking about all the things that can go wrong, think about how can I turn this round to be able to achieve more. The only way you can be productive if you're staying focused and being present at what you're doing, rather than focusing on items or situations that you actually can't control. So those, for me, are the key techniques I would use in situations when I want to regain composure, when I want to really ensure that what we are doing works, and having that clarity of mind. So think about the physical aspect.
The physical, yes. The breathing in and out calms us down.
Yeah.
I like that.
The
stepping out. So I want to ask about the stepping out. How do we do it in a way that doesn't backfire on us later? Like, oh, Angela always steps out. Angela is short-tempered. You know how we say, quick-tempered, short-tempered. How do we manage it?
Yeah. But remember, we talked about being aware, and you're able to identify your triggers.
Yes.
And if you know this situation is going to escalate, people are going to start shouting at each other. You're not going to achieve anything. So would you rather step out, come back and say, okay, where were we? Yes. Let's move on from here. Or let things, escalate.
Go amok. Yeah.
And sometimes you really don't need to even step out. You can just say, let's all take a moment.
True.
Let's all take a coffee break. Let's all stand up, get each a glass of water. It's not just the physical stepping away and all that, but it's removing yourself from, disengaging yourself from that situation, from a more physical element. And even just the act of standing up really changes the whole perspective.
Even the dynamics change.
Yeah, the dynamics change, the perspective change. Yes. True. And then now the mental one, self-talk.
I like that one.
Mindfulness.
Mindfulness is the one I'm finding very interesting. So don't be lost in the chaos. Look at, okay, where are we right now?
Yeah.
Okay, this has not been delivered. Why? Because it's stuck at XYZ. Yeah. How do we move it from XYZ to here?
Yeah.
Don't start going beyond, oh, I knew I couldn't. I like that. Yeah. I think mindfulness is really good. So now let's look at something. Resilience. Because what is sounding there is you have to be resilient. So if you were asked, what would you define resilience as?
Let me use an example here.
Yes.
A previous place that I worked, there was this young man who used to serve us coffee, but he was relieving somebody who had gone on leave.
Okay.
But I could tell there was something very different about this young man. He was always very smartly dressed and very clean looking. Even the way he walked into the office, served you coffee. When he was coming to clear the plates, the cups, he just didn't walk in and collect, but he would talk to you and all that. And one day I asked him, so when you're not relieving, what do you do? And surprisingly, he was a BCom graduate.
Wow.
And was pursuing his accounting certification. And I asked him, and so what are you doing? And then he says, see, I can't sit at home and wait for a job.
I like that.
So I'm going to do something for now. And for me, that's what I would call resilience, whereby you're sitting back and asking yourself, how can I adapt to the situation I am currently? And with time, it will get better. This young man, by serving coffee and all that, he got to talk to a few other people in the office and got to learn a lot more. And because of his resilience and adapting to the challenges that he had of not having a job and taking any job, we ended up taking him as an intern.
Nice.
And eventually he became a management trainee.
Awesome.
So for me, being able to adapt and overcome challenges that you currently have while maintaining very high level of emotional awareness, and then being able to bounce back from whatever significant setbacks you have. So this young man, his setback was what? He didn't have a job.
Yeah.
But does he just sit home in upcountry?
And wallow and feel sorry for himself.
He needed bus fare to be able to be going for his accounting classes. So the money he was getting from that work. So for me, that's resilience.
So how would we look at resilience compared to coping with challenges?
Okay. Resilience for me is a bit more long-term and broader.
Okay.
Well, coping with challenges is immediate.
Okay.
Yeah. So like now, for example, you've got this project going on and things are not going very well. How you break down the project in small tasks, that's coping with the challenge of the project not going well.
Yes.
But if after 12 months of the project, let's say it falls through the cracks and it's not going to be delivered, now that's when now we look at resilience. So resilience is broader, while coping with challenges is more immediate. Yes.
Actually, yeah. So it's one is in the heat of the moment. This other one is over time.
Yeah.
So now how can we encourage people to develop resilience, especially in the case of recurring setbacks? Not just one, but there's some things where it just seems to keep happening over and over.
Yeah. Earlier on, you mentioned about mindset. So I'm going to go back to it.
We're almost getting there, yeah.
Yes. Cultivating a growth mindset.
Growth mindset.
Yes. And what does that really mean? It means instead of looking at the setbacks,
okay,
think about what can you learn from it and how can you move past that and make do with the best situation that you currently have. Instead of thinking we are not good enough or I'm not good enough to deliver this project, you should be saying, what have I learned from this and how can I improve? So growth mindset rather than...
This mindset word has become, Kezzy, it's the go word everywhere. It was about mindset. But really, how do we get there? Because I'm sure, have you ever been overwhelmed? Because I know I've been in situations where I'm like, what am I doing here?
Yes. A lot of the times we get overwhelmed by everything. Even just being in traffic is overwhelming. Waking up in the morning, you said you're up by 3 a.m. because of the work you do. It can be very overwhelming over time. So mindset is all about, it all starts from here.
True, it starts in the mind.
Before you can even get up and do anything, it has to start with your mind where you say that I've got to get up.
Yes, I have to wake up. It's time to get up. It's time to go. Yeah.
So if you actually don't work on your mindset and help yourself in that particular point to grow that mindset, then there's actually nothing that you can do. I know it's sort of a buzzword and it has been used a lot lately.
Everyone's about mindset.
But I guess maybe they just didn't know how to explain it before.
Or what to call it before.
Yeah. But everything we do all starts with the mind. So how is your mind? Are you cultivating a growth mindset in everything that you're doing?
How do we cultivate that resilience? Because, life right now, this is a challenging time, Yeah. We're seeing AI is threatening people. We're seeing like what happened in the American market now because the Chinese have a new one.
Yeah.
So there's always new things and so how do we cultivate that mindset?
Yes.
That go-getter, that resilience?
First, start with what is within your control.
Okay.
You cannot control AI taking over.
No.
But what do you do about that?
Improve my skills.
You can improve your skills. So that would be one of the ways to work with the mindset. And then we mentioned earlier when we were talking about emotional regulation.
Yes.
Why are you getting upset about AI taking over?
I think we get scared by things we don't understand.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, it's about emotional regulation.
Yes.
Why do you feel the way you feel? So in this case, AI is your trigger because it will take over your job.
Well, that's what they say. We don't know.
Some people think it is here, it will take over the job, so we better not use it. We better not take it up. But instead, you did mention that improve your skills. So what is it within your control? And then also building your emotional regulation, understanding how you feel, what you feel, why you feel, and what you're going to do about how you're feeling. How do you respond to all those feelings put together?
Okay.
And then lastly, I will talk about developing problem-solving skills. Instead of looking at a problem and saying, EI, we were talking about EI is a problem for us. How do you work with that and sort of come up with ways of solving your EI problem? And again, you mentioned could be working on your skills.
Yeah.
Could also just be understanding what this is.
Exactly.
Rather than saying, oh, we don't know what that is.
It's bad.
And this will help you work on your setbacks rather than just looking at it and ignoring it and saying whatever happens, happens.
That's true. Now, as a coach, especially when you're developing leadership things, what are some of the traits we see? What are the things people say are the hardest to acquire so as to become more resilient? What are the obstacles they say they have to overcome?
I guess with this is really, first of all, understanding what's going on. Yeah. You're at a setback. So having a setback, then that means, do you stop at everything that you're doing, or do you sort of find a way of moving on?
Okay.
So building the right relationships and support systems would be a way of ensuring that you're able to be resilient. And what do relationships and support systems do? They anchor you.
Yes.
These are the people who you'll be vulnerable enough to go and say, this has gone wrong, I'm about to lose my job, or this project failed, I don't know what to do, I'm out of budget with, my life and everything. But having people who you can go to, it's actually a very strong way of showing how resilient you are. And with those support systems as well, they are able to help you overcome some of these setbacks and build on and your level of resilience.
Now, another thing I know sometimes when people are trying to develop their skills is also leadership skills, is overcoming personality issues. Like, maybe I'm an introvert, I'm a shy person. What are some of the things you can tell people to go beyond? Because sometimes we're held back by things we think and maybe others don't even see them.
Yeah. Interesting. You can't change your personality, but you can build skills. You can build skills around you. So that you're able to you're able to work with your personality. For example, you've mentioned about an introvert. And I remember a young girl I was coaching who kept saying she's an introvert. Every time she walked into the room, she's called into a meeting, she doesn't know what to say. And the one thing I asked her, why are you in that meeting? And she said, because I had the particular assignment and all that. So I said, so when you're the person heading that assignment, when you're called in that meeting, what are you required to do? I'm supposed to give an update. I should build on to what people are saying, or I say something and people build on it. It's the same. So I asked her, so does that have to do with you being an introvert or you not knowing what you're doing? And for a moment, she was very quiet.
That's a good one.
Yeah, she's very quiet.
It's
and then she's like, actually, I am the best in what I do in the whole company. There's nobody else actually who knows what I do. And I said, then speak up. All you need to do is figure out at what point do you talk. And if you don't want to, keep shouting over all those that are extroverts, and they're usually a lot many and very loud, ask to be given a session in the agenda so that you've got your time when you can speak. So build the skills that work with who you are. First of all, you cannot be somebody else.
True.
There are no two Kezies.
There's only one Kezi.
There's one Kezi. And I can't be anybody else. So how do I work with what I have? Like I'm an extrovert. In fact, I keep saying I think I'm 200% extrovert. But over time, I have learned that I need to listen. Because for me, I would rather be the one doing all the talking, showing people what's going on. But I've learned everybody has something to say. And as you rightly said, through coaching, we are able to bring out the best in you. we work with what you have and help you build up on it. And at the end of it, you are a better person than you are without changing who you are.
You just acquired more skills to be able to deal with situations. Now, as a leader, you have been a leader and you're teaching people to be better leaders. Whether you like it or not, things will go wrong.
Of course.
And the hardest thing is overcoming that.
Yeah.
What are some of the skills you can share on that? Because it's still part of resilience, overcoming this so-called failure. How do you deal with that? When it's like you're saying, sometimes a project will take a year and it just cracks. It goes through the cracks and it's done. Nimbaya. There has to be a point where we can accept this is not going to work. How does one get to, what does the one need to have that ability? And also how to own it and then now move on.
Yeah. So how are we reacting to this project that didn't go well?
That's a question. Panic. Worry.
It's your emotion.
Yeah.
It's going back to your emotion. So do you understand what that emotion is? That's the first thing.
That's the first thing.
Again, goes back to self-awareness, goes back to emotional regulation. And then if you're able to build your emotional regulation, then that comes with resilience. So as a leader, you've got to really understand all this rather than, as we said, bottling it or not showing your emotion or not being who you are, not being aware of what you should do. Keeping quiet doesn't help. Yeah.
No.
If anything, as a leader, what are you doing to the team? You're just going to leave everybody worse off than they are. So the key thing is all what we've talked about, being aware. How do I feel? Why do I feel what I'm feeling? How do I respond? And when I'm responding in a calm, productive, and constructive way, then there will be more output rather than not responding or rather than reacting to the situation as it is.
So, because why I'm saying this is, like now we're going through a point where there's a lot of change, even in the economy and things. People, and to be able to keep of good health, mental health, there are those people who somehow bounce back. Others seem to get stuck. How do you get out from having everything go wrong? Like maybe you lost a job, things have gone wrong completely. How do you lift yourself up? What is it? What does it take? Because we feel ashamed. I mean, I have lost a job and I remember my phone stopped ringing. Nobody called me. I stopped interacting and it took quite a bit to find my way back up. But how do we build that?
Yeah. Going back to what I mentioned earlier, cultivating a growth mindset. You've lost a job.
Yes.
You need to earn a living. You need to support yourself and maybe your family. So sitting back,
so don't cry,
saying,
don't wallow.
Oh, now the job is gone. There's nothing much I can do. That doesn't help you at all. Focusing again on what we talked about, focus on what is within your control and develop problem-solving skills. So like the young boy I mentioned, his problem-solving situation there. And when you talk about problems, so you're not talking about finding the solution to
world peace
or, the environment and climate change and all that. We are talking about things that are within your control. So this young boy decided that my problem right now is what? Not having a job. So let me do something to keep myself busy. At least I'll be earning money. So develop your, cultivate growth mindset. Focus on what is within your control. The fact that you've lost your job, it's gone. So what is it that you can do from there? And then, of course, problem-solving skills and building on your emotional regulation so that you're not just now upset and screaming, and as you're being walked out of the building, you're saying, okay, you know what? This has happened. This is how I feel. And for now, let me disengage from the situation and think about this and see how to move on from there. And that's how resilience comes about. Remember, we said it's about adapting to the different challenges that we currently have, so that we are able to come out better in the next situation when we are faced with a different situation or a similar situation.
So now, how do we find the right support systems? That's the other challenge now, because at least I like how we have been able to look within self. How do we cultivate the right support systems for us? What are some of the things we need to look out for? because this is a very competitive world right
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
It's literally, nivuta nikuvute. It's very hectic.
Yeah.
How do we create those systems?
I think it's all about, first of all, the relationships you build. And these relationships that you build can be one from family, could be from your very close friends, and even colleagues. There are people who've got very good mentors and coaches within their workplace. And with those, then you're able to know who you can go to when you're faced with when you're in a different situation. And then in addition to that, coaching really helps. What does coaching do? It helps you unlock the situation you currently are in. But then, as a coach, I don't come up with solution and start telling you this is what you need to do. It's not like a consultant. A consultant will look at your problem and tell you these are the options that you have. But a coach, I'll just sit there and listen to you, ask you questions, and you unlock the situation that you're going through. And you find that you're able to bounce back, or you're able to come out better in both your personal and professional life.
So I like that. So look for people to also lead you.
Yeah.
And also, so like, what motivates Kezi? Who do you go to when you're going through challenges? What do you turn to? What works for you?
The different relationships I've built over time, and it depends on exactly what it is that I'm going through. So work-wise, I would go to a former boss of mine, who I worked with for about 6 years and knows me very well. So even when I send a message and say, let me know when you can talk, they just know, ooh, there's a problem there. And you'll say, okay, I'll call you when I've got an hour, because that conversation will take an hour. And when I'm done with that conversation, I'll be like, okay, what was that on about? Yeah. And then also I've got also close friends who are my former colleagues that I'm able to go to. And as I said, it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
When it has to do with my children, most likely I'll talk to people who've got older children who will be able to tell me, yeah, but have you tried this and that? But again, I know as a coach, I always go back to this, because I truly do believe in coaching. When you've got an issue, get your coach. I've got a coach who I go to for anything and everything, because a coach will just work with me to help me understand myself better and help me come up with the solutions that I need within your life. So having the relationships that help you with your support system is very important in being able to bounce back from situations and have the resilience to move on over time.
Really, I think that it's been a very insightful conversation. And before I finish, there's also a physical outlet. Like, what do you do to just exhale?
I run.
You run? Wow. I was going to tell you about golf. Okay. You run as well.
Yes, I run.
How
I like to run. Most mornings, about 3 times a week, and gym, where at that point, there's no mental exhaustion. It's just physical. No, you're just letting your body do things for you and running and seeing the outside and everything. That also helps. So having something that you do externally that, helps with your system and to bring sort of some balance and clarity of mind is actually very important. And yes, on weekends, I do play golf. I look for my friends, spend 4.5 hours hitting that ball. Although most of the time we're just chatting and catching up.
I like what you're bringing back. It's back to those networks and support systems.
Yes.
But now we're doing it in the name of golf.
In the name of golf, you catch up, you chat, and actually a lot of new relationships are formed on the golf course, because these are people who most likely you will never have found anywhere.
Right.
But you meet them and you find you have something in common. But I guess for me, more often I prefer to play with my friends, because at that moment I'm being myself, I can come as vulnerable as I am. And by the time 4.5 hours are done, I'll be laughing my head off and I'll have had a really good time.
I like that, because you're still giving us more tips on how to be emotionally resilient.
Yeah.
Because we all need those support systems.
Yes,
we need to be in spaces where we feel safe.
Definitely.
I like how you shared you have a coach that you still that you count on. I like the fact that you have a former boss. I'm asking myself, which boss would I call? because it's true. We need those networks to help us grow,
Yeah.
and no one lives in isolation.
Yes.
So we truly appreciate you giving
Yeah.
us part of your day
Yeah.
to come and share with us this great insights. So we had with us Kezi Karoro Kihara. If you have any thoughts or comments, would love to hear from you. Talk to us on our social media platforms. If you have any questions for Kezi, also share, and we'll definitely get back to you. You have been watching EI Simplified, the podcast. I am Angela Mwehaki.